Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 121, The Last Rule, Part 7. And the Vizier has some thinking to do. So, I hope if you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And here we go. "3 days later, I was in my office. I had done a lot of research. It seemed to be true. Shortly after Lord Korathagg took his position of ruler of the world stopped moving forward. Of course, there were all kinds of excuses. The world had traded the discomfort of progress for the certainty of stability. The new regime had to take its time to clear the excesses and problems of the old. Progress was no longer necessary, as the calamities of yesteryear, caused by the multiple states eternally fighting each other, had disappeared. The environment had been left in tatters by centuries of corporate and government exploitation. Its recovery was slow, uneven, and in some cases impossible. All of these arguments had their points, to be certain. I would even go so far as to say that together they might have explained the lack of progress for a good while. But eventually we see that centuries have passed under his lordship, and there is no real progress to be seen. We use much the same computers as those of the early 21st century. The model names change, but they no longer represent improvements in any substantial way. Other technologies have similarly stalled. Most of the environmental damage is still understandable, as we never made the shifts that were anticipated in the early 21st century. The oceans rose and swallowed whole communities. The changes were part of what held everything back. But it couldn't explain it all. Some of it was coming from Lord Korathagg himself. Whether it was his policies or his magical immortality or simply his personality being imposed upon the world, Korathagg was an impediment to the cleansing of the world. Why I had followed, even hallowed this man, this being, this whatever, for so long? Here I was, approaching old age, while he remained ever youthful, and I admit I was weak. It was too easy. He had all the power, all the money, all the everything. Being his vizier, helping him hold on to his power, it had all kinds of benefits. And what did he get? Someone who would never gainsay him or his power, and who wasn't a threat in any way. My asexuality even assured that I wouldn't go after any of his legions of women. Not that it kept me from being terrified of his wrath if he thought I expressed such an interest. So I had quietly slipped into a life of servitude, and worse, of making sure the entire world was in servitude. But perhaps I could make it right. A few calls, and it was soon set up, but it had to look right. A few days later, I got a message. "We have found her." Well, I would hope so. I sent you to her. I did hope this would go to plan. If it failed, I would be killed. I've made it to my late 50s with wealth and the sort of power to rival any of the great leaders of history, though massively overshadowed by Korathagg. Soon I was being alerted to come to his throne room. I made sure my look was proper for such an occasion, and went directly there. As I was being shepherded in, I saw that Sasha Petrov and her beau were there, shackled. Their hands were in fact not even visible, being covered by a large system of manacles that completely immobilized their arms in front of them. Their faces showed signs of being roughly treated. I expected that. I also correctly expected them to be otherwise healthy. My lord would want them to himself. "Sasha, step forward," Korathagg intoned. She did so, coming to a stop a few strides away from him. "Before your sentence, I want to ask you some questions." Sasha just looked at him. "I want to know how you found out about Vault 414. Sasha paused a moment. "I was given the information." "By whom?" "By the one who told me my destiny." "Who was that?" "I don't know her name. An old woman who came through our village some years ago." "What did she tell you?" This seemed bizarre to me. I had no idea that Sasha was acting under some sort of fate. "She told me that the stars had written my future, that I was the one to take the immortal one and make him mortal, and then to kill him. That your immortality was a physical thing, hidden near my hometown, and that I could destroy it and make you mortal again." I wondered if there was any fortune-telling here at all. I wondered if someone didn't somehow have information on Korathagg's weaknesses and just recruited someone to deal with it. Korathagg, who had not lived for so many centuries for nothing, noted something on my normally impassive face. "You have a thought, Vizier?" As is often the case, I decided immediately the truth was the best option, especially as it did not incriminate me. "Fate? Destiny? Or did someone simply somehow find your secret and look for a tool? I will be starting a search for this person to get to the bottom of this question, Lord, with your permission." "Granted." Korathagg looked back at Sasha. "Before it is all over, you will tell me everything." My hand, imperceptibly, pushed a button to a device secreted in my pocket. The manacles fell off of Sasha's hands, and her boyfriend's hands as well. They were both holding pistols. The guards were already in motion, but it was too late. They had already lifted their hands and fired, over and over. It was bedlam. Of course, the giant of a man, Korathagg, hit the floor hard. Alarms were set off, some by me, to get assistance to him as soon as humanly possible. But that was the problem. Humanly. Korathagg was dead before they could get him to the hospital wing of the palace. Not only had they shot him, the bullets had been laced with poison. And, of course, the guards had cut down Sasha and her bow. They died without ever being taken from the throne room. In all the confusion of the moment and the massive confusion that followed, so many things slipped through the cracks. Of course they did. The world, held together by one massive, immortal personality, cracked back apart, generally into its centuries-old nation-states. The power grabs, the riots, the crackdowns, it was all very, very ugly. I ended up ruling one of the largest countries. And no one ever seemed to size up how those weapons had been hidden on Sasha or how they'd been unleashed. It's been a good life, and that is the last rule of all. And that's the end of our story. Of course, we'll be starting a new one next week, so I hope you tune in for that as well. If you enjoyed this episode or previous episodes or have any questions or comments, CryptoBiography@gmail.com or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words and music, copyright 2019, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.